while Putin is in power, while he's alive, he will continue to destroy Ukraine because he needs to subjugate Ukraine. He needs to destroy our statehood. He's fixated like a maniac on this. That's why we don't have any illusions, and we should be realistic about this.
President Donald Trump has said he hopes Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week to end the conflict. On social media, he put his caps lock on, and on Truth Social, he wrote, "Both will then start to do big business with the United States of America, which is thriving, and make a fortune." Any optimism or belief that will happen in Kiev? Let's speak to Oleksandr Merezhko, chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament and an MP in Volodymyr Zelensky's party. Hi there, Oleksandr.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for coming on. Now, first of all, this truce, to what extent did the people of Ukraine experience this 30-hour truce?
Well, it was a regular day during the war because if we take the battlefield, the front line, nothing has changed. There were around 3,000 assaults committed by Russian troops against Ukrainian troops. This night we had air alert sounding, air alert ringing in Kiev and in other cities. So, in fact, there was no ceasefire at all, and it was typical, it was expected, because Putin, if he says something, he does exactly the opposite. He is doing something only for the sake of provocation, so something like that. So it was expected, and Ukrainian people, we didn't have any illusions whatsoever that something will change.
In this case, the suspicion was he announced this ceasefire simply to keep this ceasefire potential, or this truce potential, alive for any longer period of time. Do you have any optimism that we are going to see at least a longer cease and a proper cease this time when the dust settles on this weekend?
Well, I don't believe in this, even though I would like to be wrong. But you know, all our previous experience demonstrates in compelling way that it's not possible, because while Putin is in power, while he's alive, he will continue to destroy Ukraine because he needs to subjugate Ukraine. He needs to destroy our statehood. He's fixated like a maniac on this. That's why we don't have any illusions, and we should be realistic about this.
The big question appears to be whether or not, if the noises that are coming out of the White House and the Trump administration are accurate, that Donald Trump will move on from this conflict if he can't get the result that he wants. What that means for the United States' continued support for Ukraine militarily. Have you got any idea if America gives up on this peace process or this supposed truce, whether that means that they are going to walk away from supporting Ukraine completely?
Well, I hope it will not happen. You know, sometimes I recall the famous phrase, which is attributed to Winston Churchill, who said that you can always count on Americans doing the right thing, but only after they have exhausted all alternatives. And to me, it seems that Mr. Trump is trying to exhaust alternatives, but hopefully he will come to the right thing, which is to put more pressure on Putin and to provide more weaponry to Ukraine to save Ukrainian lives, including civilians. This is the only option, the only way out.
I mean, we're in a difficult situation here, aren't we? Because I think I get the feeling that Ukraine would far rather be able to rely on its European allies. But Europe simply doesn't have the military might that the United States has. And I mean, there's a story in the Times today, it's a front page story on the Times, that European defense companies are moving away from using American-made parts because of this dependency that we have on the American military machine. Are there similar conversations being had in Ukraine about becoming self-sufficient or helping Europe develop its defense capability?
Well, we have already become, in a way, self-sufficient because, according to our president, if we take military production, we see that 40% of this production is in Ukraine. So, and how Europe can help us in several ways. First of all, of course, to provide weaponry, which they have. Second is to not only to freeze, but confiscate Russian sovereign assets in Europe, which is like 300 billion euros, to transfer to Ukraine. And using this money, we can buy weaponry from the United States and from Europe, and it will be a solution.
I mean, everything that I'm hearing and seeing about what's coming out of America, Ukraine and Russia suggests that any kind of peace deal is a long, long way away. So what is this brinkmanship? What is this artificial deadline that Trump has set for this week? What knife edge are we on right now, Oleksandr?
Well, honestly, it's very hard to read the mind of Mr. Trump because, first he promised to stop Russian aggression within a day. Then he said it would happen before the Easter. We have passed Easter. I hope that he has already started to realize that Putin is not a person with whom he can make any deal. It's like, trying to make a deal during the Second World War with Hitler. It's absolutely useless, absolutely hopeless. And I hope that he will come to this realistic conclusion.
But no one wants this war to drag on. So many lives have been lost. A British member of the House of Lords, Lord Richard Balfe, has spoken to a Russian state news website saying that Ukraine should be prepared to accept territorial concessions. Now, aside from the idea that a British lord is saying this to a Russian state news website, would it ever be in Ukraine's thinking to not necessarily surrender territory that it's already lost, but at the very least accept that it is going to remain occupied for a long time to come, if it means an end to the fighting?
Well, first of all, from legal point of view, from the point of view of our constitutional political situation in Ukraine, any territorial concessions are absolutely out of the question. But at the same time, we understand that even if we don't have enough military power to return the occupied by Russia territories by military hand, we can do it later on diplomatically. And maybe we need to be patient. So we have this goal to, in the final analysis, sooner or later, to return all the territories, including, of course, Crimea, where it had all started. But at the same time, we understand, being realists, that it might take some time, and we will have to use diplomatic and political means to do that.
Oleksandr, thank you. We always do appreciate you taking the time out to speak to us here on Times Radio. That's Oleksandr Merezhko, who's chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament.
Based on humanitarian considerations, today starting from 1800 hours to 00 hours Monday, the Russian side announces an Easter ceasefire. I order a stop to all military activities for this period.
Приказываю на этот период остановить все боевые действия.
We assume that the Ukrainian side will follow our example. However, our troops should be ready to repel possible ceasefire violations and provocations by the enemy, any aggressive actions.
Любых его агрессивных действий.
We know that the Kyiv regime, as you have reported to me, violated agreements regarding ban on energy strikes more than 100 times. This is why I ask you to be extremely attentive and vigilant, to be ready for an immediate response in full.
Быть готовыми к немедленному ответу в полном объеме.